Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 176 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. I am, as always, one of your hosts, Emerson, and joining me, we have my co-host, Anomoly.
Hello.
And this week, we have a bit of a mix of things pulling from the 10.2 PTR, more raid testing, more Mythic Plus changes, more class changes, and then also the Lich King got killed again. That's not for the
Indeed.
PTR, but
Second time.
yeah,
Officially.
officially. Um,
Um,
but before we jump into all of that, Anam, how was your past couple weeks of raiding, man? Because we missed last week's episode.
we did. So I guess in my 2 week in review, rated 2 weeks ago, when I think we actually stopped after Zskarn. Or no, we stopped after experiments because we don't really need anything left from Zskarn or Magmarax, and we get people enough vote kills from there, so we take a vote, and so yeah. And then yeah, I think that'll be our going forward kill as well. Basically, kill everything but Magmarax and Zskarn, and sort of call it a day until someone really really needs something. But no, I mean 2 weeks ago, full cleared everything in like 3-ish hours, then cut it an hour early, right? And then last week I didn't raid. I mean I was there. I could have raided,
You
but I
benched yourself,
sat.
is what you're saying.
I yeah, I mean I might have. I think I might have killed the first boss, but yeah, no, I was trying to get our druid some time. Our new, so we recruited a new druid. Get him some time on some of the harder fights. And yeah, so yeah, I just sort of benched myself. We also had our old Windwalker come back. So we have a monk buff, which is cool. Um, but yeah, no, it was a good, easy, clean raid for me. I mean, I played Wrath Classic and farmed some
Did you kill
Gambit
the
dungeons.
Lich? I guess it was before ICC release. As
Yeah, it was before I seriously, so
yeah, uh,
but it was a good raid. It was a good raid. So
nice, nice. Yeah, we similar story. We had a couple like we one night cleared both weeks. That was nice. We had a sale week before.
oh nice.
That we just sold like first four. I guess it was yeah, it was four. It was like the experiment swing plus assault of the Zakali.
Okay.
Um and the buyer had the most ludicrous trinket luck. They got
Really?
Vessel off of Amalgamation. They got OCE off of Forgotten Experiments.
What?
And they also got like some leech gear off of Assault of the Zakali.
Nice, nice. Look
Just
at them go.
absolutely ridiculous loot luck. And then actually that continued. We got another Jarun. We got another couple of Dragonfire bomb dispensers. I think we got
Oh, nice.
um another Ashkander. This one went to Transmog. I brought
Nice.
my blood decay in on Neltharion this week just to soak up the Ashkander luck, and we lo and behold got like our sixth Ashkander mythic.
That
Like
is amazing.
we have so many of these things that we have one of our warlocks has it for the Felguard transmog.
Really, that is
Yeah.
awesome. That is awesome.
Um,
That is
so
so crazy.
yeah,
So good.
it's kind of fun, kind of fun. We are still doing all the bosses, which we killed Magmarix like 2 minutes left in raid this week, but we got there at the end.
Nice.
Um,
Nice.
yeah, as I was alluding to when you said you were playing Wrath Classic, ICC came out in Wrath Classic this week.
It did. It did.
That came out on Thursday afternoon, and I don't know
About
how.
six. About six. So.
Yeah, I don't know how closely you followed the race. This was the longest world first race in Classic history.
Yep. 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 Yep.
It took about 90 minutes.
It.
20 minutes of which is the Lich King himself. Like, I don't
Yeah.
think a lot of people realize how long that fight is.
Oh, it's so funny.
It's
It's so
such a,
funny.
like, we complained to the ends of the earth about how long Sylvanas was. And Sylvanas was a 14-minute fight. Like you could go to like you could technically get to like 15 minutes if you had a blood DK sitting there in the shit, just like death striking. But
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the Lich King is 19-20 minutes.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and granted, there's a lot of RP at the end. Like you have 2 minutes of RP or something. Plus the last 10% of the boss is just a target dummy. But
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it
yeah,
definitely it was interesting. I did follow it. There was some fun bugs that people found. So
like
like
the gunship not
the
spawning.
gunship, so Progress who won the race. So there's basically three guilds. They're roughly about 15 minutes apart. It was Progress, who's a well-known like European speedrunning and world first guild. It was Beef Bar, who again, well-known, private server, really good. And then there was a new player called Noda, which I don't know I forget what it stands for,
It's
but
none of the
Noda.
above.
None of the above. Okay, got it. Thanks. But yeah, Noda is like a brand new. I think they're known for speedrunning more than their
Yes.
world first stuff. But yeah, they were the third team, and they all had different bugs, which is always fun to see. Like yeah, like Progress had the ship not spawn. Noda was stuck in combat from Professor Putricide until I think Lich King died, which was interesting. They also wiped at 1% or 2% on Putricide. Noda
Mm-hmm.
did, because they do a weird thing where you can drag certain trash into the ads at the start of the Sindragosa wing, and then the ads actually kill the trash for you. And so they did that to speed up, I think, probably Blood Queen trash. And at a 2%, the trash somehow entered into the Putricide fight. And killed them. And then yeah, once
Oh
they killed
no.
Putricide, they never dropped combat, which was rough because they did a lot of checks. And then um funnily they did this thing where you start the RP on Sourfang, who if you're not familiar with, that boss is like a 90-second RP every time you pull it, which is just fun. And they tried to summon during that, and apparently it had worked on PTR, but when they tried to do it on live, it essentially I guess locked them in combat.
Oh
So
no.
and they ran, I think they said they had like 4 or 5 range players, which on Sarafang you can't, like you need in a 25-man raid, I think you need at least 10 or 12 range players. Um, so yeah, so they had to wipe it up. And Sarafang doesn't really do any damage to the raid, at least at the start, so it takes forever to wipe. So yeah, they basically lost the race on that and then a Putricide wipe, but they were right there with Progress until that point. So
Fun fact. The Sourfang RP is longer for Alliance than for Horde.
yeah,
So
yeah,
all of the top guilds here, of course, were Horde because why would you not be? Also, this is like kind of the point at which um, Horde racials were not 100% like for every person better, but they were you know better.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of Horde guilds here.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting to watch the race. But yeah, it was a fun race to watch. The I think it's very different from like retail world first, in that like what you're watching isn't so much the difficulty of the fights, but it's the optimization of everything that goes into
Yeah,
clearing a raid, right? Like
it's much more like the MDI than like
yeah,
uh, the modern race to world first.
exactly, which I think is, I mean, I think there's merit in that too. Like, it's interesting, like watching a couple of the breakdowns late, like you start to see people talk about, okay, this is where we used our cooldowns. This is why we pulled a smaller trash pull here versus a bigger one than you did because, we saved our cooldowns for the boss. So while we were like maybe, 45 seconds slower on trash, we were, a minute faster on the boss, right? Or something.
Yeah,
So we gained time. But yeah, it was really cool. It was a fun race. I guess yeah, so Progress won it. I did get a little bit of rating in.
nice.
It is hilarious to go back. Like it just and I feel this isn't rude, but it's also fun to watch. Like, cause I haven't progressed anything in Classic ever, but it's fun to watch people die to the same thing that I remember my guildmates dying to like 15 years ago, and just being like, guys, like games are invariably harder than they were back then. Like they're more complex just in general. Like I feel like Fortnite has more mechanics in it than like WoW does. Like WoW Classic, right? Like there's just it's a very simple game, and it's like, come on, guys. But
Yeah.
then of course there's me who like I wiped our raid on Blood Queen once
Nice.
by not biting in time. Like so
Yeah,
that was the first one bit.
I did
So
the Wipe Fest config for that fight. I know all about Blood Queen Lenethil.
yeah.
This is also I do think it's interesting if you look at the encounter times in classic, like how long the boss fights actually are.
Uh-huh.
Um, there's been a steady trend up, from around a minute for a lot of fights in Nax. Not all of them. And this
Yeah.
is to some degree like with like speed clear gear and stuff, but like there's a lot of very short fights in Nax. Not Molten Core 30-second kill kind of tier,
Right.
but no, they're not very long. Um, and that's been trending up and up, and I think these are the longest across the board, except for things like Gunship, right?
Yeah. Which is
Which has been a meme since actual Wrath because it is so much
yeah.
easier than anything else in the instance.
Yeah. It's hilarious. And now there's even newer tech where it goes faster, where if you distract the mage, so the I guess real quick, just this is funny tech, but as a part of the fight, you're basically it's a vehicle fight. You get in cannons and you shoot the other ship, and eventually once you kill the other ship, you win. But at certain intervals, a mage on the opposing ship comes out and freezes your cannons. So you're supposed to jump over there and kill the mage, and then your cannons become unfrozen. So you can DPS again. However, if your rogues are fast and they distract the mage as it's coming out, the mage stops for 10 seconds
Oh,
and never casts the freezing spell. So essentially, you can go the entire fight without your cannons ever getting frozen if your mages are quick enough, or so your rogues are quick enough,
this is like I did not expect
which is
there
awesome.
to be another Jaina cheese
Oh
on
yeah,
the other boat fight, right? Like, because that was the thing
yeah,
with
that was
Jaina. If you always kicked that one spell from the elemental, it would never do the. I don't even know what the other spell did. It like applied
yeah,
stacks of the freezing debuff to everybody. Um, and so the intent was that you would like uh have to deal with those stacks and deal with people getting frozen and all this stuff. And no, you
yeah,
just kicked it and it never froze anybody.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, very similar. So no, it was yeah, it's cool. I mean, like the Wrath stuff, like I've always said, I think I'm having more fun playing Wrath right now than I am playing retail, which is kind of sad because I've done a lot of it, right? But it's I will say it does do the one thing that I think current WoW lacks is like you can finish a character. Like there is a specific
My monk is done.
yeah, okay. Well, that's fair.
It
But I
took a
mean,
lot, right? Like it's very,
well,
very
is
high
it really
bar.
done? Like, do you have tertiaries on every piece? Do you have
I mean,
sockets on everywhere you
tertiaries
need?
don't matter. I do have sockets on
I guess for
everything.
you, yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
for healers, like you'd want full leech or whatever. But I
yeah,
mean, yeah, I guess that's that sort of like for me, it's nice to know like this gear will never get any better, and there's nothing I could be missing, right?
yeah.
Like,
I
and
actually do
there's
have
everything ready to
tertiaries
go.
on
So,
multiple pieces too. I have like 450 gloves with avoidance.
oh, nice, nice, yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's fun to go back. Wrath is cool. And the Gamma dungeons are nice. They need, yeah, I don't know what I think they're two different games right now, and it's funny that like retail is not holding my attention. But I'm also playing DPS in Wrath, which maybe I just need to not play a healer anymore in
Maybe
retail.
you're burned out on healing.
Maybe could be. But cool. I think that may be enough of our classic block. We can
Yeah.
shift forward a little bit. So, in other fun, non say gaming news, but kind of ancillary gaming news, is the acquisition or Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard was officially closed Friday morning at 9 Eastern. Largest acquisition I think Microsoft has ever done. I think it's the largest acquisition in history at $68.7 billion. So if you've had some Activision Blizzard stock sitting around, you got paid a little bit, which is nice. So yeah, but they finally received final approval from the CMA, which, if you care, is the UK governing body. Um, and so CMA had their final decision due October 13th, which they came out the day before, basically said, they gave preliminary approval for the acquisition to go through. That was the last major governing body they had to get over. And I guess it was 2 years ago they announced it. 21 months is sort of how long this has gone on, which is,
It's crazy, yeah.
I think when we said it too, it was like these acquisitions are never quick. This one took, I think, a little bit longer. I think when we first mentioned this almost 2 years ago, I was like, it'll probably take a year before like this officially closes, and then like,
Yeah.
even multiple years after that. But no, it took 21 months, got approved, goes in. We also learned that Bobby, how do you say Kotick?
Bobby
Kotick,
Kotick.
yeah. Bobby Kotick's last day as CEO is January 1st, 2024. So a couple more months and Bobby will be out, which more than likely makes sense. There was a tweet by, I don't know if it was the Microsoft account or Xbox account, that basically showed the new structure. And it's going to be very flat when you consider Activision, Blizzard, and King. They're going to treat them just like they did Bethesda, be another large publisher. Within the Microsoft structure, and I believe just all the heads of each one of the studios will just report back up to Phil Spencer, who's of course head of gaming at Microsoft. Which is funny because Quick gets to, or I guess Mike Ybarra gets to report back to his old boss at Microsoft. Which if you don't remember that, Quick or Mike Ybarra is originally from Microsoft. I think he led all third-party studios and reported directly to Phil right before he left to join Blizzard. So gets to hang out with his old boss again. This time, though, as the head of his own studio, which is cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, the saga's over. Bobby's gone. I think a lot of people are happy, but we'll see.
And for
We'll see
those
how
that
much.
were curious, Bobby's golden parachute is around $300 million. So that's what you know.
I don't know if he'll be okay on that. I mean, he'll
It's got to be rough, you
summon it.
know. How do you even live with only $2 million per year for the next 150 years?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, the yacht's got to cost more than that to run. So
That's true. He's got
that'll be
staff to pay on that yacht.
He does. He does. Gas price is always going up. So
True.
yeah. No, I mean, um, it'll be interesting to see exactly what changes. I mean, if you've taken Bethesda as an example of what Microsoft has done, they haven't made a ton of changes over there at Bethesda, other than basically every game is on Xbox Game Pass that Bethesda's releasing, which is I think only a win for consumers. But it does consolidate a bunch of stuff under the Microsoft umbrella, which I mean, they haven't ruined Minecraft too much. That's been there a couple years. Bethesda doesn't really show signs of them making too many specific changes. So I haven't seen much bad come out of it. Maybe Halo and the way they handled Bungie, but that's been
Yeah.
years. So it's been years from now. So I mean, yeah, it's I think only good things. A couple of the Blizzard employees I've talked to have been happy about it. So we'll see. Um, but cool. Maybe we can now talk about the game. 20
Yeah.
minutes
Yeah.
into this
Imagine that.
podcast. The
Imagine
real
that.
game, the retail game.
Yeah, the retail game. Do you want to start with the Mythic Plus stuff, or do you want to actually? We have a little bit of news about
Yeah,
the
let,
reputation.
yeah, let's start with Mythic Plus, and then we can do the reputation stuff. Because
Okay.
the reputation stuff, I have maybe some forward thinking things about
Okay.
this.
Okay.
But yeah, so a couple of Mythic Plus changes went in. I have not. So I think we both talked about this. Neither of us have really done a bunch of Mythic Plus testing on PTR. So we're not going to talk about a lot of it. But the two big things that came out were changes in the Dawn of the Infinites instance. So the first one being Morchie, the notorious little gnome that you have to identify what hat they're wearing and go to the one that doesn't have a hat. They've changed the way that it works.
The hats
So
are much
now,
bigger.
yeah, the hats are absolutely massive. So you shouldn't need a Weakor anymore to sort of notice which hat is. The Weakor that I use would basically just put a huge model like next, like on my screen of like the NPC you're targeting. But no, nowadays or now the hats are absolutely massive, which is makes it much easier to just visually see without needing a Weakor to
Yeah.
show you.
This mechanic was super bad in the mythic version of it. This is I still like okay, this is fine now, I think. It's
Mhm.
not that hard to tell at a distance. Like you could see I had it pulled up on stream. Maybe you couldn't see if you're listening, but um the hats are huge. The POV here was automatic jack on his priest. Um or sorry, on his paladin.
Mhm.
That'd be accurate. And he's on the opposite side of the arena from where the actual like real Morchie that they have to go stand next to is. And it was very clear that that was the one without a hat.
Yeah.
Like you still had to like scan the room and figure it out, but like it's not. It's very visible. So I think it's much better, and it saves us from having a mandatory dungeon weekor for this stupid boss.
Yeah, exactly. Particularly like, the way the WeakOR I used was so rudimentary. It was literally just like show a model of what you're targeting, and so you'd have to like click through and target everything to find the right one. Um, so yeah, so that's sort of definitely a good quality of life change. And then also in Dawn of the Infinites, they changed the gauntlet in terms of the speed of casts and um, yeah, how things happen. So the big frontals now are a 1.9 second cast time, which is a zero point 0.1 second increase from the Mythic Plus difficulty, and I think it's a 0.3 of a second up from Mythic Zero. So a little bit more time to maneuver with the big frontals, and then the displacement bolts look to have also received a 13% slow in their speed. Based on the data mining, looks like the orbs themselves of the little ads shootout will now be moving slower, again, easier to dodge. So
Yeah, so if you've done the Mythic Zero version on live, this is in both cases 10 to 15% slower than it is on live. So, not like gutting it, but 10 to 15% is noticeably easier.
yeah, you get a little bit of leeway in how that works. So yeah, so they I just a quick aside, they did adjust a bunch of timers. We have no idea how if that makes that dungeons easier or not easier,
Yeah,
just
I
for
mean,
just for
obviously it
completeness
makes
sake.
it easier, right? The timer gets
Yeah.
longer, and it's got to get easier, unless they're buffing the dungeon.
No, they the timers went down.
Timers went down. Never mind.
Yeah, yeah,
Harder
yeah. So yeah,
timer.
harder, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, but we have no quantifiable way to say if it's harder, if it makes
yeah.
things
I
that
have
much harder or
done
that much. So,
0 keys on PTR. I did last season. I have not done any this season.
yeah, I don't think I'll do. Yeah, I'll do keys when I have to do keys. Let's put it at that.
I've been doing all the raid testing, which they just
Yeah.
added more. I gotta decide if I want to do heroic raid testing this week.
Nice. Nice. But cool. And then the other thing that was data mined from PTR that's not sort of a class change or raid testing is they've data mined a permanent augmentation rune. So it's called the Dreambound augmentation rune. Comes from, I think, reputation level 18 with the new, or renown level 18, sorry, with the new faction. And yeah, it's permanent augmentation rune. These things generally only appear towards the end of an expansion, Emerson, and
Yeah,
we haven't really gotten much in the way of, feedback from Blizzard on if this is the last patch or not. I know we've sort of discussed it a little bit as a speculation, right? There's a bunch of speculation over the past 2 weeks previous to this with some stuff that was found in data mining. We didn't go too much into it, just that hey, looks like potentially the last one. And yeah, then this augmentation rune pops up, which I think is a pretty good indication that this will be the last patch. I think there's only been one expansion that they put out multiple augmentation runes, permanent runes like this, and that was Legion, which is the first time I think they ever did it. But for BFA and Shadowlands, it was always the final patch of the expansion had the augmentation rune included. So
yeah.
this is an expensive purchase. It's like 100,000 gold, I think,
Is
to
it
buy one of these.
really?
Yeah, and they're
Holy
not
crap!
account bound. Um,
I'm not spending 100,000 gold on a permanent augment rune.
yeah, I don't think I. So to be fair, I probably will just because I don't. Yeah, just it's fine. But yeah, no, yeah, it's funny. They've added this in there. So it looks like I'll be doing a bunch of dailies, getting back on that daily grind for a
Um,
while. And then,
I note about that. So one of the things about season 2 stuff is that Aberrus doesn't give reputation with Loeb Niffin, the rat people, mole people. They have their own reputation. So if you weren't doing the world content, you basically weren't getting it. So I'm like renown level 12.
yeah, I don't think I might not even be 12, honestly.
And that's like from doing crafting turn-ins and stuff, right? Um, I believe the new faction for next tier, you get reputation from doing the raid.
Okay, well that's good.
Like I've seen reputation pop-ups. I couldn't tell you actually if it's the same reputation
Hmm.
as this one as Dream Wardens, but I know there's a reputation pop-up when we like killed bosses on PTR. Um,
Gotcha.
And granted, the last time we killed a boss was like late heroic, early mythic testing, so
Hmm.
that could have changed. But I would not be surprised to see us gaining Dream Warden reputation from the raid,
Yep.
which does mean that this will be a little bit more accessible to raiders without having to go and do a ton of world content. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
I still don't want this to be the last patch, but you know,
Yeah, I don't. We talked. I talked to some guildmates and even some people who are just like tangentially have played WoW in the past. I'm like, hey, is it good to come back? And it's funny. My point, my a lot of people said this about this expansion, but like this expansion started off really strong, and like just never had like the peaks that other expansions have had, right? Like it's very much a slow burn of like slightly increasingly getting better and better, but like not like the massive like differences in like, oh my gosh, they've changed like in Shadowlands, like they like changed
yeah,
the requirements to swap covenants, right? And like that was like a massive quality of life improvement. Everybody's happy. Huge shift. Probably should have been there from the beginning, right? It seems like in
yes,
this expansion, like the decisions they made were the right decisions at the start. And so
yeah,
there wasn't a lot of like massive change. But yeah, people have said like to me, Dragonflight has been, I mean, if you base it on BFA and Shadowlands, the best expansion they've had in at
oh
least the
yeah,
past two. I'd say even to be fair, early Legion like was not as, I think late Legion probably better than Dragonflight, but I mean early Legion was rough. So now it's been a while since they've had I think an expansion as good as this one. But
I think some of
we'll
that.
see.
I think some of that, to
Hopefully,
be honest, is the strength of the Legion dungeon pool.
that's
Like
true. Yeah.
Mythic Plus was still new-ish. There's stuff now that we just like some of the one-shot nonsense. But there was a lot of just delirious memes you could get into with the Legion dungeons and how classes were tuned. Stuff like AoECC being way more powerful, letting you do some just ridiculous pulls. Absolutely ridiculous. Like I used to run all like from the bottom in Blackrock Hold from the bottom of that staircase. I used to drop Transcendence, run to the top, grab the pack at the top and all the spiders, and come back down. And we would
Nice.
do that pack.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And half the time it wouldn't work because somebody would miss a stun or somebody would stand in a spider's death explosion and we'd die. But you know, it was fun.
That's good to try. It's fun to try. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think for me, Legion is always marred by the fact that like class balance was, at least in the context of healers, was so off that
Yeah,
like
Mistweaver
playing a
was
Mistweaver.
terrible.
Yeah, Mistweaver was I to this day I will challenge anyone. It was the worst designed healer ever. Like worst healer like design or iteration that they've ever put out there. Like going all the way back to the original like paladin designs of like like vanilla or
That's a
whatever.
strong statement because
Dude,
classic. I mean, I
nothing
guess
worked.
classic. It's hard to say classic healers were designed as like healers. They were more. I feel like a lot of classic design was more of like, here's a bucket of abilities, go
Yeah, do something with
do
it. Yeah.
something with them. Yeah,
Yeah. But no, yeah. So I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it. So in any event, I think getting a little bit back on topic. Yeah, we'll see if this is the last patch. I mean, I would say that they really were high on Faded, or that sort of like quote unquote season 4 from Shadowlands. So I would assume we maybe get something like that at least in the short term. But I mean, yeah, if this raid comes out in November, you got to expect if they're going to announce another expansion, another if they're not going to do a patch, 10.3, that we get an expansion over the summer or something like that. So, which will be fun. Um, but cool. Yeah, I mean that's sort of I think maybe all the news for this week before we get into some of the main topics of class changes and other stuff. I don't know if you had anything else from your side.
no, I do hope that we do actually get the reputation from the faction because then I'll actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not. If it costs 100,000 gold, I'm just not buying it. Right?
But it's 87 stats.
I don't care.
It's true. Not gonna make or break killing a boss, that's for sure.
I don't care. Yeah.
That's fair.
Um, but yeah, it's it's I do believe even if it is the last patch, we'll get another like even if it's just like a small patch doing faded stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool. I think Faded worked out well. The Dinar system worked out well. So it was a fun sort of, 2-3 weeks of, or actually it was longer than that, but it was a fun
It was
end
a
to
long,
Shadowlands.
yeah, and
Yeah,
hopefully no fate of the fixes. That's my wish. No fate of the fixes.
yeah, no,
Redoing bosses that you haven't seen in a year or more is already enough of an affix.
yeah. I don't want to do Razagath trying to do dispels and then soaking orbs. Like I just don't want to do that. I just don't want to do that. All right, so I guess a little bit into so the main talk said today is there's a couple of class changes both to monk and some other like other classes that impact rating. So we want to talk about those, and then also of course there was more raid testing. They've extended it a couple extra sessions. So let's get into some of those. So first up is augmentation. This would have happened almost 2 weeks ago now. We missed this. This is right after our last podcast.
Yeah,
But they went through a bunch of sort of changes into augmentation, primarily with reducing how strong it is to stack them. And so basically, I mean, this isn't, we haven't really talked about augmentation, but what they've ended up doing is the majority of augmentation buffs will only stack up to two, meaning you'll only have two Ebon Mites, two Presciences, etc., etc. Um, which is good in terms of, we'll say, the healthy balance of the game, right? Like I think going into this tier, a lot of people, particularly at the high end, and even to be fair, even our guild was looking at this, was like four augmentations is what you're going to run to get maximum benefit, and like hopefully things aren't tuned or potentially might be tuned around having four, and it'll be tough. So with this change, they basically capped everything at essentially two, so you can do most of what you need with just two augmentation invokers, and live a happy life.
the
Um,
the other thing that they did is they made it so Ebon Might will now prioritize other DPS over augmentation evokers. So for those that aren't familiar with how Ebon Might targeting works, it prioritizes people that are in cooldowns, DPS that are in cooldowns, and then any other DPS, and then healers and tanks. Augmentation, we're in that any other DPS category, but we're really, in terms of actual benefit you got from buffing them, more like a healer or tank.
mhm.
So basically, as I understand it, they got moved to kind of this layer in between healers and tanks and other DPS. So the only way you now get Ebon Might, not now, but like with 10.2, the only way that you get Ebon Might on another augmentation evoker is if there basically aren't any other DPS that they could target.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, which is, I think, it's a good change, right? And even in that targeting aspect of it, to allow basically just to sort of stop like the additional scaling from all that stuff, which is where
It,
you put where a class goes from being just strong to being almost mandatory, and then
yeah,
Blizzard will the
and
buff fights around it, ugh, just awful. So
it is also worth noting that Prescience is the only one that is hard capped at 2, from what I understand. Ebon Might will still stack higher up to its current, I think it's capped to 4. Um, but it's like a soft cap where, like, because Ebon Might does auto targeting stuff, um, you basically have to have prescience on it to force the one to go there. And even then, I'm not sure if it'll respect the prescience or if it'll go on somebody else.
yeah, yeah, I don't know the inner works of that targeting, but no, that's true. That the hard cap on two is only impressions. But I mean, with the amount of people in even a 10, or
Yeah,
I guess 10 would be if you had three augmentations might be it. But like as you get up there to like in the 20-man mythic rating, it'll be tough to sort of force Ebon Might buffs above two.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
in order to be fair.
It will require shenanigans. Like I've heard some talk of people being like, "Oh, what if you have people not prescience their target, and then Ebon Might by standing close to them,
Yeah,
and then you have the prescience ones put it on, and then you get it to 4." That's a lot of setup.
yeah, yeah. Well, that I've seen too. Like, there's been like summoning shenanigans, which I don't know if that works anymore. Where you basically summon a certain group of people you want to stack buffs on into a pixel stack basically area. Because if you don't move as you summon multiple people at the same time, they all end up in the same exact coordinates, and so you can potentially force even more Ebon Mites like that. It just requires people not to move once they're all summoned. So there's
Amazing.
yeah. there's been some interesting things I've seen out there.
Oh
But
my
no, I think
god.
in general, from a overall raid health, I'll say perspective, this is a healthy change to like limit the amount of augmentations you may need to stack. I think if you're an augmentation evoker, you're probably not exactly happy with the way that Blizzard's sort of nerfing it. I think this class, it's the first time Blizzard's ever doing this sort of support thing. So I think we're gonna see changes up until the raid releases, and then I think even beyond that, additional changes like
Yeah.
specifically to augmentation. So it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to balance, I'll say.
Yeah, it's fundamentally augmentation being a multiplier is just so different from anything else.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Um,
Um, so yeah, so I think in other class change news,
Mistweaver got more stuff, right?
we got more changes. Yeah, actually, it was in last week's PTR. I guess this week's PTR. We got a handful of new changes. Some very interesting ones. So, first is bounce back. Was updated for us. It now provides or now triggers at when you take 15% of your maximum health and damage. So it was 20, so a reduction of 5, and then the actual damage reduction is increased to 20 or 40%, depending on points, which is up from 10 and 20%. So essentially doubling the damage reduction from bounce back for Mistweaver, which
Which
is
means that I'm now making our Mistweaver take Ox statue. Not really, but
yeah. I mean, it's a solid sort of passive defensive change to Mistweaver. Um, but yeah, it is, yeah, it's just a solid passive defensive change, I guess. It still has a weird triggering rules that no one is quite sure how it works. We don't know if it's like a dummy issue or if it's like it only triggers on direct damage and not like environmentally sourced damage, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's isn't 15% of all damage, we'll say. We then also got two changes around Vivify. And so the first change is the straightforward one is Vivify and Invigorating Mist healing was increased by 12%. So that is the main target Vivify and then any of the Vivifies that trigger from renewing Mist targets. That healing was increased by 12%, which seems like a buff, but it was in conjunction with a nerf essentially to Clouded Focus. And so Clouded Focus, which is if you heal a target while channeling Soothing Mist, um, with a Vivify, it increased the healing and mana reduction of that Vivify by I think it's 15% now per stack, and it would stack up to 3 times.
yeah.
They've reduced that to 2 stacks now, so it only stack up to 2 times, which cuts a little bit off the top end. With the increase to the base healing of Vivify and Invigorating Mist, it's probably a net neutral change, and honestly is a little bit better from a gameplay perspective because you get to that maximum CS Clouded Focus stack faster. However, they also fixed, we'll say maybe it's not a bug, but they're going to call it a bug, where you no longer increase the healing of the first Vivify. Meaning, so in the current way the spell works, you actually get the increased healing on the first cast of Vivify. So, like, even at 0 stacks of Clouded Focus, you cast Vivify. That Vivify has the healing increase, I think without the mana increase, or mana reduction, actually. But they fixed that where now you no longer get that initial healing increase, which sort of kind of stinks. You basically don't get an extra boost to Vivify for this, which is where the sort of the nerf kind of comes in. I think while it stats, you get your maximum stacks quicker. It is a lower ceiling, but the base spell heals for more. I'd have to look at I forget the math off the top of my head, but I think for the normal player, we'll say like someone like myself, it's actually a net buff. I think like a minor buff. But
Right.
at the top end, if you're,
If you were
you know,
abusing the hell out of it.
yeah, if you're just named Swaggles, then it's a nerf to you.
I think we said the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. And then one other minor thing, they've gone back and forth on our 4 set. It's now back to storing 20% of all healing. It was
I
15.
saw that.
Uh, they'll figure this out at some point. I foresee 20%
It's been
being
20 and then
restored.
15 and then 20 and then 15 and then 20.
I
They'll
think
figure it
as
out
they,
someday.
yeah, it's funny. It seems like they're actually trying a little bit more with Misfeed. People have been saying some of our private sort of peak chats are funny, but it seems like we finally got a dev that I don't know, cares is probably the wrong word, but that has spent more than 30 seconds looking at our class and
Yeah.
so like typically we'd see a bunch of healing changes and our maybe set bonus would stay the same. And at the end, set bonus get changed, or like we had a bunch of healing changes and people forget about the set bonus until like after it goes live. And so
And
it
then you
seems
have
like they're
infinite
now,
mana, you know?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so now it seems like they are caring about both, basically trying to balance as we're going across everything else. So
Yeah. And that's
yeah,
good. This does kind of coincide with the cadence of raid testing, I will note, where
yep,
like we are getting class changes after each round of raid testing, basically, which I
hmm
think is very interesting.
yeah, it is. It will, yeah. I mean, it's yeah. It seems like just in general, there's a lot more activity. Almost like there's more people working on WoW, but like I don't, yeah, I don't know.
I
It's
don't
weird.
know.
Yeah,
I don't know anything about that.
yeah.
Um, but
And
speaking of
then,
raid testing,
oh well, one
oh,
more
you have
thing.
more? Oh, there's
Well,
more.
Windwalker got a bunch of changes. I just wanted to put because I feel like we're
Oh,
among
I didn't
podcasts. We
see
got to
that in
talk about
the.
Windwalker a
I,
little
I
bit.
didn't see that in the link.
Yeah. So
I clicked the wrong link.
it's in
Yeah, I
the
did.
development notes,
I
not
clicked the
the.
wrong link.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
gotcha. So yeah, so they've done a bunch of balancing, we'll say, with the set bonuses along with the spells around the set bonuses. And so like, you know, they've reduced some of the damage bonus that Rising Sun Kick and Fist of Fury get from your 2 and your 4 set, but now they've increased the overall damage a bunch of abilities do by a flat amount once you equip it. So some, I think in general it's a power increase for the team, and then they've done a flat increase to Rising Sun Kick, Whirling Dragon Punch, and Fist of Fury damage. So again, trying to tune that knob with Windwalker, but we'll see how
Windwalker's
close
single
they get.
target being bad has been a gigantic meme forever because
Always
the old justification was that they had to be worse single target because their AoE was so good, but their AoE's not even been top tier for several patches. When was the last time
exactly.
Windwalker AoE was top tier? Actually, I think Windwalker's single target was top tier more recently than their AoE was top tier because
Yeah,
on with Weapons of Order on like Sire Denathrius and stuff in Castle Nathria, that was like real big single target. And I guess they could do really good AoE on Stone Legion, but yeah.
yeah.
I
So it's
guess I'm forgetting about Mythic Plus. They did the spin to win stuff at Bone Dust Brew in Mythic Plus.
yeah. Yeah, I mean they've been up and down. I think like yeah, between rate like the other problem that they struggle with is yeah, because their single target generally is never good unless a fight has a lot of cleave on it, then
Yeah,
like Windwalker generally, like Sylvanas being a good Windwalker fight because a lot of ads in phase 2 that were priority, um
yeah.
killing all the spikes and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean we'll see how they sort of shake out. I know that people aren't too high on them right now in terms of like where they fit in the overall DPS, but
Yeah.
yeah, it is what it is. So cool. Okay, so now I think we're ready
Now
for
we're ready for raid testing.
raid testing. So they added, right? So
Yeah.
they raid testing was supposed to end last week, right?
Well, I don't think anybody expected it to end last week
Mm-hmm.
because it just wasn't done. Like they skipped several bosses.
Okay.
Um, and things got changed significantly. So last week, so we did not have one of the bosses got skipped. They took, I think it was Nimue was going to get a retest and it got taken out.
Okay.
Um, and then they also had Volcaros, which is like the big worm, is the kind of patchwork style fight. Um, was horribly bugged in like multiple different ways. With one mechanic, there's a new group soak mechanic, and it was supposed to be splitting damage, and there were two issues with it. One is that the damage wasn't splitting, which is
No.
obviously a problem, and the other is they
Yeah.
made a typo and it was doing 10 times the amount of damage it was supposed to.
Nice. Nice.
So it was hitting everybody that soaked it for 12 million damage, which is not livable.
Oh Jesus. Okay.
I wasn't
Nice.
joking about it being 10 times. They just added an extra zero, basically.
Nice.
Um,
Nice.
so that one actually got retested this week. They just brought it back this week for a big old like 3 boss omnibus test on Friday. We
Very cool.
retested Igira the Cruel, which is like the second boss, significantly improved. Not going to say a lot about it. They fixed like there's no more stun. That's
Okay.
gone. They cleaned up a bunch of the other mechanics of the fight. Overall, it's just significantly improved. It's a pretty good fight now. They brought back Volcaros for retesting because it was broken and untestable last time. And it's fine. It's perfectly like functional. It I think feels pretty reasonable. It's probably going to be harder than Magmarax, which is not a high bar, but it is a bar.
Nice. That's good.
And then we very unusual. They tested Tindral Sage Swift, which is the second to last boss of the raid. This is the dragon riding boss. They tested it 2 weeks in a row.
Ah.
And so the first time it got tested on Mythic. So like if you remember on Heroic, this was a pretty good fight. Like this is a pretty solid fight. Um, the only dragon riding, I'm going to make a note of this. The only dragon riding was in the intermission, going from platform to platform, and like it mattered how quickly you got to the other platform, and you needed to like have some people go around and pick up orbs while with dragon riding to like buff the people on the platform so they could break a shield, and then you get to do the next phase. And it's all like it worked. It was a very nice fight. Mythic is a mess. Oh my god.
Really?
Oh my god. It's so overloaded. There is so much going on all the time, and it's to some degree, there's this thing that happens. Like you might remember the first time that you pulled Sarkareth Mythic Phase 1,
Hmm.
and just everything going on all of the time.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
It's pretty chaotic. This has more. It's just got more stuff going on all of the time, and it's got uh, mixed in with that. It's got like the it's got like restrictions on your movement that Sarkareth doesn't have. So you can't really adjust. Specifically, it's got the roots, which suck. I don't really have another way to put this. They were tolerable on heroic. I really don't like them on mythic. It's just this kind of thing where if you're just gonna root the whole raid,
Yeah.
it needs to be something like on Diurna where it just instantly dies, and it's not. It's not dispellable. The conceit is that in um, the main phases, now there are falling stars that people have to dragon ride and catch.
Yeah.
The first test had a ton of issues with like the tank mushroom mechanic overlapping with the feathers that players had to pick up in order to go and catch the falling stars. And basically, nobody that was public logging anyway, nobody that was public logging made it past 30 seconds into the fight, pretty much.
Really.
It was a disaster. And that is because kind of the cadence of the fight is extremely quick. Like in the first 30 seconds, you're getting 6 different mechanics. 3 of which one shot the raid if they are messed up. Um,
Oh.
right.
Fuck.
This is what I mean by overloaded.
Yeah, yeah.
So like the feathers. I brought this up for heroic testing too. The feathers had a lot of interaction issues, like implementation issues, where in order to dragon ride, you first had to find a feather and then hit your extra action button, and the extra action button just kind of lingers there for a while after you actually get the buff. So we actually had a WeakAura that I made to tell you when you actually could use your dragon riding mount. But they were very small, hard to see, spawned inside the tank mushrooms that would one-shot DPS. Um, and so it was just a mess. Coming back this week, the feathers spawn. So like now there's basically, you can imagine it as 3 concentric circles. There's the melee packed inside on top of the boss. Then there's a circle around that, which is where the mushrooms spawn. That
Hmm.
kill you if you soak them in Arta tank,
Yeah.
or kill the raid if a tank fails to soak them. Um, and then there's a circle around that, which is where the feathers spawn. So now the feathers will always spawn in locations that are not going to overlap with the mushrooms. And the feathers also, now you just have to walk into them. You don't have to extra action button it, which on the one hand is significantly cleaner. And on the other, leaves room for ranged to accidentally walk into them and pick them up. There's no cooldown on picking them up, but you do get a 1 minute debuff for catching a falling star.
Okay. Okay.
And like the conceit is you're supposed to use those falling stars to like nosedive into the boss. and do a bunch of AoE damage to the vines.
Right. Yeah.
Um, the vines do a point blank AoE on them when they spawn, which means you can't like hard stack on top of the boss to make it really efficient to kill them with these things.
Yeah.
And
Oh god.
you actually get 2 sets of them per set of feathers that let you dragon ride, which means that you can only clear every other set using the stars. Every other set you have to just DPS down. But it has the same health. So
Yeah.
it's actually just easier to not do that and just kill them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so you like, and then there's just like missing a falling star, instant raid wipe. Not like the like, oh, we're kind of dead now in the way that, you know, somebody falling through a hole on Sarkareth or walking off the edge, you know, or getting dazzled. You're
Yeah.
probably wiping. No, everybody instantly dies. Kind of instant raid wipe.
God.
Missing a mushroom. The fire one, if you miss that, is actually livable. The poison one is not. That takes for people's whole health bar basically every 2 seconds
Oh my gosh, dude.
for 10 seconds. It's not livable.
Yeah.
And then there's a so on this mechanic existed on Heroic. 3 people get a dispellable debuff that drops a fire puddle, and you just like dispel them out of the raid. On Mythic, it applies a raid-wide debuff, and damage. It's like the Painsmith traps, and if you dispel the second one, it just instantly does 1,000,000 damage to the whole, like literally 1,000,000 damage to the entire raid, and instantly one-shots you.
Yeah.
So you just have these 3 different like instant raid one-shot mechanics going on just all the time in phase 1. On top of the fact that like you have stuff like the fire beams that still do their fire tornadoes, but now you have the whole raid getting rooted, and the roots just take a few seconds to break. And so you really like you still have tornadoes from the previous set of fire beams in motion when you get rooted. And it kind of sucks. It's kind of a disaster. It's
that's awful.
So I think a lot of people, including us, made it farther. We were getting like a minute-ish into the phase now. But it just like...
I mean, is it like, it sounds like just like like another mechanic vomit type fight. Like
Yeah, like there's obviously ways to deal with the overlaps. It's just, there's in kind of the taxonomy of raid fights, right? There's overlap fights where you have, you know, like this is, I'm gonna do it a disservice by bringing up Zskarn, but this is Zskarn. This is, you have mechanic A and mechanic B, and they're very easy, but then mechanic A and mechanic B happen at the same time, and that's hard, and you have to deal with the overlap. But generally those don't like slam you with mechanics all the time. That's more of like the dance fights. This is like Denathrius slammed you with mechanic after mechanic after mechanic after mechanic, and very few of them overlapped. You had a couple of key overlaps, but it was primarily like one, then the next, then the next, then the next. The challenge was getting from A to B to C, living through all of them, and then also doing enough damage to kill the boss. This is like slamming you with mechanic A plus B, and then B plus C, and then C plus D, and all of them just like back to back to back to back to back.
Yeah.
And then kind of the cherry on top is still that the dragon riding, in the main phase, the damage that you get from doing the dragon riding mechanic is not worth actually doing the mechanic. It's a net loss for everyone.
Jesus.
So, I've brought this up in the PTR threads, and I'll bring it up again.
Yeah.
Just ditch the feathers. Just let, this is still a major, I mean, it's much less of a pain point now. Like, we were very reliably getting our falling stars done, but it was still like, you know, somebody would be like, oh, who took my feather? Some random person walked through it, and now we just instantly wipe 20 seconds into the fight.
God.
Just let people mount. It's a net loss to mount up. Just don't require us to go, like, I know there's some kind of like fantasy, like, oh, you take the feather from the Alkin form,
weird,
and then you can do the thing. No, it just let us mount.
Yeah.
It's not worth having this little fantasy bit in order to, when it makes the fight this much worse and this much more frustrating. Like, it actually feels fine that the falling star just one-shots the raid if you miss one. I don't think there should be 4 of them. There are 4. Did I mention that? There are 4 of them.
No.
So you need 4 people all to catch them. Any of them that get missed, wipe the raid. And you can catch multiple, but the second one-shots you. So, like, if somebody misses it, you can have a hero play, somebody just dies. And that's, like, we did that on testing. It'll be a thing on prog. 4 people's a lot. It's a 50-year raid. Those people are not contributing any DPS to doing the vines. And a lot of the time, we were just killing the vines before the dragons got back. Like, we would kill a significant chunk of them before the dragons got back.
Yeah.
It's just, like, again, like, the damage you get from it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
They really should just let you mount up. The other thing that they got tested, they skipped Laradar testing on Heroic, and the normal testing for it was very broken. They tested that last week. It's actually a pretty sick fight. I like it. It's got, you remember the, again, I'm going to do disservice by analogy, but do you remember the lines mechanic on the Jailer? Where you had to, like, form a chain of people from the Azurite Heart to the center of the area?
Yep, I remember that, yes.
This is the same, but in reverse. There's now a fountain in the middle. There's a fire hydrant in the middle. You have 4 people click it, and they make a fire hose, and they put out the fire.
Really?
And they can move while they're doing it, too. And there's none of the other, like, kind of janky bits of the Jailer ones where it would, like, one-shot you if you got clipped by it and things like that. But
interesting.
It took a little bit to figure out the mechanics of how it works, and there's some, like, visual clarity things that go into it, but it does actually work pretty well, and it's pretty easy to clear out the whole platform and get it all, like, set up for the next phase. So this is now, like, a cyclical kind of boss. You do the same cycle 3 times, and then he goes into a final burn phase. And so it actually seems pretty good. I think it's a pretty good fight. They are testing that one on Heroic this coming week. As well as Nimue, who I'm not going to talk about because it got significant changes and the dungeon journal is still confusing. They're retesting it on Heroic. The last Heroic testing for it was a mess. We'll see. That's honestly, like, the only reason I care about Heroic testing this next week is to do Nimue.
All the changes.
Yeah, but yeah, it's. Tindral needs cleaning up. I don't know what they need to do there. They need to, like.
That sounds rough.
It needs some toning down on, like, the intensity of the raid wide one shots, I think, and then maybe a little bit of toning down of the dragon riding. Like, just don't make it do it alternately instead of it being 4 each time. Have it happen twice as often and be 2 each time, and then, like, the 2 people can, like, do their thing and, like, maybe contribute to every other set instead of it being every other set has no dragons. Every set now has dragons, but half as many. I don't know, something, or just, again, like, don't make us pick up the feathers. It's just annoying. Yeah. Tindral hopefully gets some changes. It's just a messy fight. It's not undoable. It's not, like, it's just annoying.
Yeah. And that's the thing you don't want is, like, those annoying fights, which is like
it's like the stuff that would happen on Stone Age in general sometimes, where somebody would mess up the blades and just, like, it would cleave the raid and the raid instantly dies.
Yeah. Or, like, not even mess up, like, someone would be like, the blade would think someone was somewhere else and just instantly just 30 stacks.
I mean, in this case, it is actually people. Well, I guess actually related to that. Boss hitbox is very small on Tindral, which may not seem to matter that much, except that Fellblade, if you are a Vengeance Demon Hunter, will take you out of the mushroom you are standing in.
Really?
Oh, yes. So we wiped a couple times to that. And then also, like, there's just a bunch of time that if you're not the active tank, you can't actually hit the boss while you're doing the mushrooms, which kind of sucks for, like, Blood DK. Because you can't death strike. But every time you do mushrooms, you get a chance to move. You have 3 seconds to move in between, so you can, like, do a drive-by death strike. So it's not like the end of the world. It's just annoying, right? It's just annoying.
That's fair.
But yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. All right. That's all the raid testing. I overall, I think the raid's looking good. Tindral scares me because if that's the second to last boss, like I just don't want it to be a mess because it's going to be a high pull count kind of deal.
Yeah.
I don't want an annoying boss to be a high pull count boss, right? Like if it's going to be annoying, make it 20 pulls, not 100.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. Not the second to last boss, that's for sure. So
Yeah. Uh, but yeah, I think that is going to be it for the podcast this week. I think that's rechecking those. Yeah. Okay. That's all. That's it for the podcast this week. Thank you all for watching and or listening. And if you enjoyed this podcast and you want to support it and the other work that we do over on the Peak of Serenity, you can do that over on our Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And of course, come and join the Discord. It is the best place to come and learn about yet more Mistweaver changes and what these clouded focus nerfs mean for
Nerfs. Yeah, I
you.
think it's nerfs. I think it's nerfs.
But yeah, that's going to be it for the show this week. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.